Hi everyone. I've been asked to do a training video on the bank reconciliation function within Access Dimensions. So here we go. If I go into the financials and click on cash book, this is the cash book screen within Dimensions. And I can actually go and look at any nominal account in the system which has been defined as either a bank account or a cash account. If I choose that option, I see the cash accounts. To define any nominal account as being either a bank or cash account, I simply find the account on screen in the nominal ledger, and then I click on either this button that says bank or this button that says cash. Now in this instance there's a history on this account. There's actually movements, there's been transactions, and flagging it now as being either a bank or a cash account will have the effect that future transactions, any subsequent transactions I post to this account, will be reconcilable. They will have a reconcilable flag attached to them, and we can either reconcile or unreconcile them. They will obviously go on as unreconciled, but the existing transactions on that account don't have that flag. They don't have a reconciliation option. You won't see them on the bank rec until after the next period end, when the system can do an update and alter those transactions. So it's advisable to set your bank accounts or define your accounts as bank or cash accounts immediately when you set them up on the nominal ledger. If you don't, there are mechanisms by which we can correct or alter that, but you'll need to talk to your Dimensions consultant or Access Accounts support team. So back we go to the cash book. So financials cash book, and we're going to work on a particular account today. So I'm going to use bank ledger or bank accounts, and I'm going to go with this particular bank account because it's quite active. There's lots of good stuff on it. So initially the screen that I see here shows me the opening balance. That's the opening balance at the start of whatever the current period is on the database. And this database has been running for a while. We have future period posting enabled, which means I know there are transactions in periods 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, along with the period 1 movements. And I could see that if I wanted to by just drilling in on this screen, and that would show me transactions, and I can see then that there are movements all the way up to period 5, which in this database 2020 is the current year, and obviously period 5 is period 5. So we're seeing the sum of all of those transactions there, and we should be able to confirm that quite quickly. We'll see then we have our total down here, which is a total amount on that account, and that matches up with what the current balance is. So you're looking at the opening balance, the movements, the receipts and payments throughout all periods, and then the current balance is the balance as of right this second. We have an unreconciled figure here and a reconciled. The reconciled ought to agree with the figure per your last or the most recent bank statement up to which you have reconciled. That's what that number is, and that should always stay in alignment with your bank statement. That's the whole objective with this exercise. So other options that we have along here, then we have a little plus batched button, and that allows me to add in or to look at any transactions that might exist within the batch of either sales, purchase, or nominal ledger, or all three obviously. If I click on the little drill down there, it shows me or allows me to drill in and look at the transactions that are sitting in the batch for each of the three ledgers. And if I were to change the list definition here, I can see at the moment it's showing me only transactions in the batch for that particular nominal account. So this is just your standard inquiry window, but it's been set up to isolate for just the transactions hitting that nominal account from all other ledgers, from the nominal and sales and purchases of all types. And that's what we're seeing there. We can also then add to that all other bank accounts. So that's all nominal accounts which have been defined as bank accounts. So that's what we're going to see there. And then to that we can add in the transactions batched against those other accounts. We can't drill in on it, but we can actually look at all transactions that are batched against all bank accounts on the database. So the whole objective here is to try and give us a kind of a more comprehensive cash position, or bank position, I suppose, and equally then if we wanted to, we can do that for the cash position as well. So if we just go back, then we're focusing on this bank account. We're going to look at doing the bank reconciliation. So we click on the reconcile button, and that brings up this bank reconciliation window. And if I were to click on the display button now, I would see transactions dating from May all the way through to September on this particular database. And at the moment, the transaction that I'm selecting on, or that I've highlighted on, you'll see in the lower part of the screen it has multiple parts to it. Okay, so there's actually several lines there. The reason for that is the subtotal option here. has been set defaults to subtotal by date. So we're getting one transaction or one record here per date, and then below we're getting the breakout or the individual lines or the items that make up that transaction. To get rid of that, I just click on the none option. So basically I'm saying subtotal by nothing or none, and we'll then go from 61 lines showing up here up to 737 lines when we're looking at each individual item. So now each individual transaction is displayed as its own transaction on the database here. There are times, however, when sorting the transactions, or rather subtotaling them by transaction reference, may be of more value to us. So in the context of this database, we collect monies from customers via direct debit. And when we generate a direct debit file and present it to the bank, normally the bank will record that money as one value, one total value being received into our bank account. But obviously those funds are being collected from multiple individual customers' bank accounts. So in this context, you'll see that we have an amount received in there of 14,384. However, that's coming from 4 different customers. In that context, though, it's reasonable just to actually expect that we'll just reconcile that off as one amount, because it will appear on our bank statement as one amount. So throughout the reconciliation exercise, we can keep flicking between the subtotal by transaction reference or date if we wished, or none, and that allows us then to kind of just keep sorting. The effect of that then is that if we do subtotal transactions by reference, as we did in that instance, once we choose to say none, they all kind of expand out, but the yeses stay on the individual transaction. So by yes, I mean that the flag has been set to reconcile, and they're in there someplace. So other options then to consider, we're looking at a lot of transactions here. 737 is a big amount. On our bank statement, let's just assume for a moment that we're only looking at transactions up to a date in time. In this context, let's just say, given the number of transactions we have, let's just go to the end of May. So on this particular display or this window, I can then say, just show me the transactions that are unreconciled up to the 31st of May. And we can shorten the list of transactions we're looking at. So this just makes it a lot easier then to actually kind of find the item that we're after, and we can quite easily find it and double click on it to reconcile it. Next thing to look at, if we click on the icon up here that says statement, we can change the display at the lower part of the screen. So in the list definition, we're basically filtering and subtotaling. In the statement window, we're actually just looking then to see, we want to get our bank reconciliation up to a particular value, and the statement value I'm looking at here, I plug it in based upon the last item, or the balance per the bank statement as at the last line or the last item that I'm reconciling up until. So if I'm reconciling to the end of a month or the end of a week perhaps, I'll just draw a line under that transaction on my printout, my bank statement, and say, right, that was the balance as at that moment, that point in time on the bank account, and that's the number that I want to plug in here. So right now, because I have 0, obviously I have a big difference showing up down here. Let's just for the moment assume then that if we were to reconcile those 3 items, and we're kind of doing this in reverse order just so I can actually engineer the value that I want. So if that's the number that I'm after, by choosing to reconcile those transactions, so that's showing me the difference that I have at the moment, and then as I reconcile each of those transactions, I should hopefully get closer to the total reconciled here should equal this number, and obviously the difference should then go back to 0. Once I have that done, I can choose to save down the information of the reconciliation that I've done. A few things to be conscious of then at that stage. If I say I want to save it, the system warns me that I haven't entered a statement reference. So I'll just say no, I don't want to continue, and it allows me to enter a statement reference here. Traditionally, that would have been the page number on the printout from the bank statement. Nowadays, with banking online, you may not have a sequential page number on your bank statement, so you might look for an alternative reference or number. Typically, I would say maybe use something like this, where we have the year, month, and day, and that's not today's year, month, and day. That would be more the year, month, and day relating to the last item or the last line I've reconciled up to on the bank statement. So let's assume that I'm doing this to the end of May. And again, just to be consistent, I'll keep the the numbers like that. Now again, I don't need the hash, I don't need the dashes. It will accept any number or any reference that I put in here. It's not going to be, it's not going to check to see what existing references I have or anything else. So it's down to yourself to try and remember to be consistent and keep things in sequence in that regard. Moreover, the reconciliation date is the one that I'd focus on. And the point here is that I'm reconciling this in mid-October. I haven't reconciled it since May, apparently, and that's fine. The system doesn't have an issue with that. It just means that if I'm reconciling the statement up to the 31st of May, then it would be a good idea to put in that that's the statement page or the statement reference that I'm using. It means that if I come back, if I need to do a bank reconciliation showing me transactions up to 31st of May, I can see what was reconciled on that date. So we can then actually say we want to show transactions or show the reconciliation up to that date in time, and that will give us only the transactions that were outstanding and entered with the date up to 31 May on the system. So that's what we're getting at there. If we were just to reconcile a few more transactions, so let's just reconcile that list of items there. And these items, this item for June. So let's just assume that we want to reconcile to the end of June at this stage. We can do the same exercise, just say to the 27th of the 6th. And we save that down. So that's that reconciliation done. So now we can run the reconciliation report up to 31 May, because we have transactions up to that date. We could do it up to 27 June. In this case then as well. So we see a list of transactions outstanding on the system at the 26th of June and up to that date, or 27th of June, I think we said, yep. Now, however, if I went back a step then, if I just leave that report open for one moment, and if I come back here, and we'll just come back and run this for the 26th of June, we would see the additional transactions which we reconciled on the 27th of June are still included and still unreconciled up to that date. So the objective, or the whole point then, is that by using this reconciliation date, we're putting a flag or a stamp on the transactions to say these were reconciled on the reconciliation that I did on this date in time, and it means that I can go back and run a report to show me everything reconciled up to that date or prior to that date, whatever we choose to go with. If I leave this as today's date, of course, then it will show me that there was no reconciliation done. I did no reconciliation in between May and end or middle of October. So that's kind of the standard functionality that we go with. Typically, the reports that we're running from this is the reconciliation report, and we can do it for all transactions, which will show me the current position. Now, obviously, on a database like this, where we haven't done a reconciliation in quite a long time, we end up with many pages of information. So it's better in that context to go with transactions that are reconciled up to a date or a point in time. There are other reports available, such as the statement report, in which case I can enter a statement reference, full reconciled audit, which is the sum of all transactions ever reconciled on this database, and it's showing me those transactions, the reference that was used on them, and the date and period they were entered, etc. So you can see there's a little bit of inconsistency, well, actually a lot of inconsistency as far as the reconciliation reference that was used in those transactions. So again, just try and get into the habit of being consistent with your references on the reconciliation side of things. Other reports that we have, then we have a full unreconciled audit, which is just a list of transactions not yet reconciled in the account. Just print display transactions, which are just showing whatever's appearing back there. Main report though, reconciliation report. I hope that's of some help to you. I think you have my contact details, or if you want to comment on this video, please feel free. If you want to ask a question, I'll try and get back to you if I can. Thanks for your help.